Good afternoon. I am Pete, also known as Risk for Rewards or at Risk for Rewards over on Twitter. And we have surpassed the 15,000 followers over on Twitter now, and it is skyrocketing due to the blog being released. So if you haven't already seen the blog is over there. It is free for anyone who wants to go and take a look at it. It has got analysis, stats, 2024 pointers, everything you can find for this week for the Cheltenham Festival is already listed on my blog over on Twitter. So if you're looking for a good read, or if you're sat at work and you want something to read, or if you're going to the festival and you want something for a quick glance on the train, everything that I have wrote is all in that blog over at Twitter right now. We have passed over 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube. So if you're new, welcome. I've been doing Let's try again. I've been on YouTube a while, but I've not really used it, to be honest. In the last 3 weeks, we've gained about 700 followers. So we went from about 300 up to over 1,000 just because it's the Cheltenham Festival. And everyone knows that's the only reason why I'm here and why everyone follows me. Is just for those big festivals, Cheltenham, Aintree and Punchestown, and then the big meetings on the flat, Royal Ascot, 2,000 guineas, 1,000 guineas. I've got good records in those. I like to think that I do well in those. And it's not just about the tips, it's about the content. I put a lot of work in and a lot of hours. I'm not joking when I say it's took the last 10 weeks and a lot of hatred from my partner, my girlfriend, for me just sat there doing the blog, doing the blog, doing the blog. But it's just one of those things. I enjoy doing it. She knows how passionate I am and I just love it. And it's just good because I remember when I first came to Twitter, I didn't know very much about horse racing. I wanted to win. I didn't know how, and there wasn't anything like it. So there still isn't anything like it anywhere. So that is exactly why it's there, and it's free for everyone to use. So I'm going to run alongside the blog. I know everyone likes to see that I do just free fall, and obviously I don't use notes. I haven't got a load of stats in front of me. I'm just going to talk you through all my selections. And today we're doing day one, Tuesday, Champions Day. So the only difference is it's not Champions Day anymore because Ruby's retired and Willie Mullins doesn't mop straight through the card like normal. But let's see if we can get some winners. So the only thing I am going to go to on the with regard to the blog is 3 pointers that I've highlighted on the blog. I think it's very important for anyone, whether you could be a veteran at the Cheltenham Festival and this might not apply to you, or this could be your first Cheltenham Festival. I put the blog out yesterday because that's 36 hours before, is because you want to have a plan this week. You need to strategize. So what I mean by that is you don't have to go and back every horse throughout the whole week, but you need to think, okay, if your better bets come later in the week, you need to make sure you've got money set aside for that. And you need to, it's not me saying gamble responsibly, but you need to choose your battles. Pick your 5 best bets that you think of the week throughout the whole week, and then think, right, what am I going to do there, and then work back from that. You don't want to get to the end of Tuesday and then be like, oh, I've got no money left for Wednesday. And at the same time, it's all, yeah, okay, it's brilliant if you win everything on Tuesday, but then you might start changing your stakes, doing whatever. So it's just have a plan. It doesn't have to be cemented. It's just a rough plan. You're like, do you know what? I really fancy Mighty Potter on Thursday. He's probably going to be my best bet of the week. What am I going to do with that? Do I want to put him in a multiple? Am I going to play him as a single? What am I going to have on him? Okay, okay, that's set aside. I know that you don't have to put the money aside, but it's just thinking about it mentally so that you don't just go berserk on Tuesday and then you're lost by the time you get to Friday. On the flip side of that, the weather is mental at the moment. So like we've gone from having no rain forecast to now we're on soft ground from this morning. But last year they did say it was good to soft, edging on soft, and the times came back good. So I'm not always convinced with the Cluck of the Clawson when he does his stick readings that it is guaranteed to be soft ground tomorrow when we start. So, but therefore, I wouldn't plan. I'd plan far in advance, but I wouldn't bet too far in advance. So what I mean by that is like there's a lot of horses running on, say, Wednesday. You've got the likes of Hermes Allen, Enigamine, Delta Work. All of these horses love the slop. They love the soft ground. But if we get there tomorrow on the Tuesday, and they've had another 6 mil overnight, they're supposed to have potentially a little bit more tonight. If they get there and then suddenly 2 or 3 races come back and they're like, oh, it's probably good to soft, airing towards good. And you're like, okay, well, suddenly I've gone and backed all these soft ground horses and it could be towards good. So you'll know very, very soon on, and these markets aren't going to disappear. The bookmakers want your money. They are going to boost these, not massively, but they're not going to leave short prices. The likes of Honeysuckle was like 4 to 7, between 4 to 7, 4 to 9 coming into the Champion Hurdle last year. And she was 4 to 5 on the money of the Champion Hurdle. And all she had to do was beat the exact same horses as she beat the year before. So it wasn't like you were learning anything new. So what I'm saying is, strategize your approach, but be patient with your betting. Yeah, you might lose a couple of points. So if you fancy a 10 to 1 shot and you lose it and it goes off 8 to 1 instead, because you've waited to see what the ground conditions are or the jockey bookings, I mean, if it wins, what's the difference between 2 points? And if it loses because you've not weighted that, and then suddenly you're like, actually, I don't like him anymore, you're just wasting your money. So that's what I mean when I say strategizing. Um, uh, Point two, which is massive for me, and I get people mentioning it all the time, is you're not here to shoot the lights out. You can back more than one horse in a race. There is no shame that if you fancy two horses in a race and say they're 3-1 apiece, two 3-1 shots still pay even money. If you fancy both of the two at the front of the market and they're both 3-1, for example, and you can't split them, like you could do that twice and you could split them twice and you could be on the wrong end of twice. And suddenly you're on -4 points. Whereas if you'd split them and split stakes, you'd have got less profit. But one, you're not on the -4, and two, you've just gained the extra +2 because obviously you've gained 1 point from the first one and 1 point from the second one. So you're doubling your money each time. So at the end of the day, sorry, +4, not +2. So at the end of the day, you're looking to just try and enhance your money. A prime example would be if you were going to lay a horse. So say a big one tomorrow will be Constitution Hill. Constitution Hill is currently around 2-5, 1-2. If I said to you, okay, right, here's £50, go and place it on the back or lay, a lot of people will be like, oh, I'll get a lot more money for the lay. He might not win and I'll go with that. However, if I turn around and said to you, say he was 1-2, if I turn around and said to you, right, mate, this is, sorry, not, it could be ladies or gentlemen. If I turn around and said to you, okay, I've put the bet on for you, you will get £75 if Constitution Hill wins, or you'll get 1-2, you'll get 150 back if he loses. A lot of people will suddenly be like, hang on a minute, well, 75 quid from nothing if he wins. Okay, yeah, I'll go for that. And what I'm trying to say is you have to remember is it's just as important to not give your money away as it is to try and give it out. It's better to win. You could back four horses and you may win, I don't know, 50% of your stake. So the equivalent of 1-2, but you win the money. So if you put £10 on and you get £15 back, yeah, you only get 15, you've only made £5, but you haven't lost any money. You've gained. You've then got extra money to go forward. Whereas you could put that £10 on and you'd be like, right, I'm only going to go with that one selection, try and shoot it like bang, gone. Next one, bang, gone, bang, gone. It's not about trying to, there's 28 races. You are going to have ones where you just think, this is the horse. But you don't need to do that in every single race. And if you've got a hunch, if you think, I really can't split these, there's so many ways you can play it. Don't be afraid to have two horses running for you, even if it's at odds on. Like you could back two horses at, say, I don't know, 2-1 and 4-1, pair them together and it might pay 5-6 or 4-5. People are like, oh, I don't want a 4-5 shot or whatever. But if you're still on the racetrack with your mate and you're sat watching, you're watching that horse come down that hill, you're not going to be thinking, oh, it's a 4-5 shot that I've made this. You're going to be cheering because you're excited. You're watching the race. It is about enjoying the race. And then when the race finishes, you're like, okay, I haven't lost any money and I've just gained on a 4-5 shot. So if you've put £10 on it, you've gained £8 profit. Whereas again, if you've split your stakes, the one you've picked is ended up out the back of the TV. The one you haven't picked is out in front and they're battling for the lead. All you're going to be doing is saying to your friend, oh, I was going to pick that, I was going to do that. Just don't be that person. Just I'm not saying you need to go back 20 horses every race, but if you aren't sure and you do think, do you know what, I really fancy that, and I'm not saying do this off other people's influence, so don't back your own horse and then turn on ITV and someone says, oh, this is a great value bet, and then you start backing all these other horses. Stick to what you want to do. But what I am saying is do not be afraid to take less of a profit. I mean, people, you get some of the richest people in the world are stockbrokers and people who play in the stock exchange. These guys are living off like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% a race. So that'd be like the equivalent of you putting £10 on and only getting £1 from each exchange. But the difference is you're getting your £10 back and your £1. It's just as much about not losing the money. Anyway, so we go on. And the final point that I just want to make, and this is just from me personally, is that I don't get paid for this. And all I'm doing is putting videos out. I'm doing a lot of content on Twitter. I've mentioned over there, if people like the blog, if they enjoy it, and they've enjoyed any of the content from the last 12 months, there is a link below and on my profile to PayPal. And if you'd like to buy me a pint, quite a few people, nice people, have paid in the last 24 hours. They've sent me a fiver to buy me a pint. And do you know what? That is I'm really generous, and I really appreciate that. I don't want to charge for the blog. And there's a lot of, I can tell you now, there's 4,996 people who viewed the blog in the first 18 hours. So, and if I charged people for that, then some of the better people who deserve to read the blog might not have the money to be able to read the blog. So that's why I haven't charged. I want to get out, but it has taken a lot out of me and a lot out of obviously my family life outside. So But that's over there. If you're generous enough, that is on the PayPal. But at the same time, if you haven't got the money or you don't want to, that doesn't matter. Anyway, let's get on to Cheltenham. So, right, as much as I'm not going to obviously run through everything parrot fashion, I do need to go through my Cheltenham selections because obviously there's no point me telling you a load of things and then missing them all out. I will have a multiple as well, a day one multiple for everyone who's watching. So let's go across to Odds Checker and have a look at day one. So day one. Honestly, the amount of times I have come to the Supreme and I have got a horse that I'm so strong on and I can't see it beat, and that's the one for me. This year has got to be one of the first years in many where I've looked at and I've just thought, I've got no idea. I can make a case for plenty and I can pick negatives against plenty. And the way I see it is you're either for or against Facile Vega. The big thing for me for Facile Vega is obviously it's a huge negative. The stats are against him. You've had something like 2 in 96 of one having come off a defeat like he has. And they're like rogue horses like Lebeque. And that was an awful run. And obviously he's only had 5 weeks. So if you saw him run today and then run in 6 weeks, he'd probably hack up today. And then in 6 weeks' time, you'd be like, yeah, I'm back on him. So, but 6 weeks is a long time in horse racing. And they come out with their excuses. And it wasn't great. And he has beaten Ilate before. The big thing for me, Facile Vega, is the soft ground. Like I always thought that he's not a good ground horse on such a short trip. I didn't really think that he needed to be a Ballymore horse, but last year he absolutely relished that bottomless ground in the Champion Bumper. And I think, I know obviously he's been touted as one of Willie's best ever and stuff like that, but I just think he enjoys the slop a lot more than others. But he hasn't done an awful lot. He's a Group 1 winner ahead of horses like Ilate Tom. But he's just so hard to weigh up. Like the vibes are strong and all of this, but the vibes are always strong until after the race when everyone's like, well, that was obvious. And this is a classic example. As soon as this race finishes, if he bolts up, everyone will be like, that was obvious. And if he falls out the back of the TV, that was obvious. So for me, like I can't put you off him because obviously you can see all the negatives yourself. But at the same time, it's hard for you to say, yeah. The only thing that I will say is obviously Mullins' record. Mullins and Henderson are the guys to go to here. Both of these two have insane stats for the Supreme. Nicky Henderson's got no runners in this year, so it's all on Willie Mullins. So it's a tough one. Marine Nationale, I appreciate everything he's done, and he was one I did look at. You could easily, if you wanted to go against Facile Vega, I wouldn't put you off pairing Marine Nationale and Ilate Tomps against him, because obviously you'll be getting a similar sort of price. They'll probably pair up if you back both of them, probably about 2-1. But Facile Vega is on the drift to 11-4, and what if he drifts out to 3-1 or 4-1 on the day? You suddenly start thinking, okay, it gets to a point where you should be backing him. So it's a tough call. Ilate Tomps obviously beat him, but at the same time, Ilate Tomps was well beaten in plenty of juvenile races last year when running free. And he has looked a lot better, and he really did lie up with a pace well this year at the Dublin Racing Festival. But at the same time, if you take out obviously the winner, obviously he won the Dublin Race Festival that you were expecting Facile Vega. And he bolted up from Dark Raven and In the Pocket. But it's interesting that the connections of both of those two have decided to reoppose here. So Ilate Tomps, I think, is the knock in each way bet. Like Marine Nationale, I understand the case, but Ilate Tomps, I find it very hard to see because we know the pace is going to suit and everything will suit about this. And if pushed, that could well be the one. I haven't nailed it down myself yet. I can't have high definition because he doesn't jump well enough. In the Pocket, I fancied for the Ballymore as an outsider because he's staying on performance when beating 3-card Bragg. I thought that would suit. They've come here because of the soft ground, but I don't understand unless it's really soft and that's enough to reverse form. He's got to find 10 lengths with Ilate Tom, and I don't know where you're getting that from. Diverge 18-1, very interesting horse. That would be the prime sort of Willie Mullins candidate for a handicap. If he'd had another couple of runs behind some Group 1 horses, I'd have thought he'd been a perfect handicap block. But he hasn't. He was well beaten on debut behind High Definition. Then came out and hacked up, absolutely bolted up. And 18-1, like if I'm on the track tomorrow and I'm looking at the boards and it's like 20-25-1, I might think, you know what? Why not? Just chuck a couple of quid. And when I say a couple of quid, I'm not going to turn around and say a couple of quid and then pull £100 bet slip out like you see sometimes. When I say a couple of quid, I mean like 2 quid or whatever, because it's not, he wouldn't be my strong fancy. But at the same time, if he wins, brilliant. Dr. Bravo, I respect that big run that he had, but it's just not really for me. And this isn't anything personal. Obviously, I'm English myself, but I just can't have the English being better than the Irish in the novice hurdle division. The thing that's biggest for me is the fact that Willie Mullins has got such an array of talent. The fact that he's been so hell-bent leaning on his runners here, and he's left his two strongest being Facile Vega and Ilate Tom. they're just drawing me towards that. And Facile Vega, I'm looking at the price now, he's now at 11-4. And this is what I was saying earlier about backing two horses at 3-1 or bigger. If Facile Vega suddenly turns above 3-1, like I would not be surprised. Well, I don't even need to. At 11-4 and Ilite Thompson at 5-1, I wouldn't put anyone off Dutching those two. In fact, at this current moment, as I've just decided, talking to you here on YouTube, is that if the market stays the same, come tomorrow morning, because I want to get best odds guaranteed on these, and I don't get that till 10 o'clock tomorrow. Those will be my two that I will Dutch tomorrow. If Facile Vega is currently 11-4, if he's 11-4, 3-1, and Ilite Thompson is 5-1, I will Dutch those two. And that is completely down to, it's a wide open race, and obviously 1 or 2 quid on Diverge. Completely open race. It's very hard to have an opinion. If I was sat here on a Saturday, I'd probably just say no bet. But it's a Cheltenham Festival, first race, and people don't come here to listen to me to say no bet. So that would be it. And why? Purely because, one, because Willie Mullins got such an array of talent. 2, because his record in this race, and he's done it so many times. So I just think that is so important at these sort of things. Could it be a blowout race, like where you get like a rare edition or something winning? Of course it could. But at the same time, I want to put the eggs in my basket on the proven tested. Marine Nationale I respect, but a lot of that is down to his trainer's comments and stuff. I thought the Group 1 that he won was windy enough, beating Irish Point. He did it very well. I'm not a massive fan of this whole break coming into it, especially with the ground becoming soft now. If he won, would not be surprised. But at the same time, he was 25-1 at the start of the season. Facile Vega was 5-2 at the start of the season. And obviously they've gone different routes since, but you can give any horse a second chance, especially if he gets to the right price. And obviously it's not a positive if he's drifting, but at the same time, it's different getting a horse on side at a bigger price. I'd expect him to drift. So, right, onto the Arkle. And I will state, I do have bigger fancies that I like going through the day, because obviously, again, I'm about to be pretty windy here. So the Arkle, this is a brilliant race. My fear would be that maybe the front three aren't anything special, like proper. I've come here in the past and I've had like some of my biggest bets have been in the Arkle, waiting on the likes of like your Shishkins and your Altiors and horses like that in the past. But I come here and this is such a brilliant front three, in my opinion. Like St. Roy would kill me from an anti-post perspective. I'm not going to go on about the anti-post because I know a lot of people will not have the same anti-post, but the guys that follow for 12 months, like we've got John Bonnet 4-1, El Fabiolo either 7 or 8-1, depending on what you could get. And Dice Up Dynamo was 12-1, or if you could get it, it was 20-1. So we've got this front end of the market absolutely wrapped. And if one of them wins, obviously it's absolutely brilliant. And that's why you bet anti-post, because it takes all of that thinking out and you just hope that one of those three. Obviously the fly in the ointment is it could be St. Roy, but he's been well beaten. He was beaten by Phil Daw and stuff like that. And he's become quite the wise guy pick. I've seen Ruby Walsh put him up as well. I'll be really disappointed, especially on the track. I will be mega disappointed if we've managed to get a market set up in this sort of like this tight with 2 7-4 shots and a 9-2 shot, and one of those doesn't manage to deliver. I'll be very disappointed. Dice Up Dynamo, the only way I really see him winning is if it turns into a Rock on Ruby Champion Hurdle sort of situation. What I mean by that, on the day, Rock on Ruby, there was Hurricane Fly versus Binocular. Those two stalked each other out the back in the Champion Hurdle, and Rock on Ruby was out front. And they spent so long looking at each other, worrying about what the other one was doing, that Rock on Ruby got his lead. And then when they finally started moving down the pack to get out in front, they'd given the leader too much rope. He'd left some in reserve and he kicked on again. And that's the only way I see Dice Up Dynamo winning. I think Dice Up Dynamo is at least probably £6 to £12 below the front two. And obviously every time he's come to the big leagues, he's been found out. So he fell in the Supreme. He wasn't going to win that with Constitution Hill, but he may have got second. But I think he was beaten. He was tiring at the time. But at the same time, you don't know, do you? Obviously, he was well found out in the Irish Arkle when he was beaten. But at the same time, he ran a very good race. And that was over 2 mile, 1 furlongs. And we're dropping back a furlong here. So if you stop the clock there, he's only just about to get taken over by Phil Daw. So, sorry, not Phil Daw, El Fabiolo. So obviously the shorter trip is going to suit. Cheltenham can suit a front runner, and he's going to get soft ground, which I think he relishes. The other two look very stamina laden horses, whereas he is obviously all speed. Problem is he just doesn't have the same sort of. I don't believe he has the same sort of class and level as the other two. But if they leave him on the front and he gets a lead, but I don't think they will. But if he does get a lead, he will have. They'll let him go at least a few lengths. And I presume. I mean, I haven't got jockey bookings up here. I presume it's Danny Mullins? Yeah, Danny Mullins. And obviously we all saw what he did at the Dublin Race Festival. If you give Danny Mullins a sniff, like Danny Mullins could be on a double if he won in LAT Tomps and Dice Up Dynamo back to back. You don't want to give him too much of a lead, but at the same time, I just think the other two, you're not coming round and getting a short straight and an easy chance to take over. That is a long way coming up through the hill. As soon as they turn in, like they're going to have plenty of time to catch him. So, in my opinion, it is El Fabiolo and John Bon would be the Dice Up Dynamo was a good bet when he was double figures, which was straight after the DRF. He was up towards 8, 9, 10 to 1. But now 9 to 2 is quite skimpy, and he has got blowout potential. If he goes too hard, then he could blow out. So then it puts it down to El Fabiolo and John Bon. So if you just let me make my decision, El Fabiolo, John Bon. Honestly, these two horses, I have in my head that obviously, as I mentioned before, they're either both very good or they're both going to turn out to be good horses, but not like great horses. Like, I think John Bon, everything he'd done leading up to his last time out, everyone was drooling over. His sectionals, his timings, the way he jumped. If he gets too tight into a fence, he sorts himself out and he fiddles over it. Like, he is such a good jumper. And obviously being a full brother to Duvan, like, fences have really made the make of him. Because I wasn't a massive, I backed him in the Supreme Novice, but that was due to price at 33 to 1. But like this year, I wasn't convinced that he was going to be, and especially when they started talking about the turners originally for him to stay. But he really has taken to his fences very well, and he did capture the imagination very fast. He wasn't brilliant behind Calico, but part of me thinks Aidan Coleman did a lot of that on purpose because he wanted to give him a proper race. He wanted to get not so much get him headed, but just teach him to jump under like a lot of pressure. And everything that he did there, it was brilliant at the end of the day. Yeah, he's 20 pounds clear, but the horse has won since, so it's not like he's a complete yoke. It's a respectable horse. But everyone's just comparing it because obviously El Fabiolo came out of the Dublin Race Festival. Put it this way, if El Fabiolo hadn't won at the Dublin Race Festival, take that back. Like you've got Dice Up Dynamo, Banbridge, and Appreciate It all finishing in a heap like 1, 2, 3 in that Irish Arkle. If you took El Fabiolo out, would everyone be knocking John Bon just because of that Warwick performance then? I don't believe they would. John Bon would be sat here at even money or odds on, and they'd be working out who's going to run in the Irish Arkle. So, just I'll cover John Bon first. So, I think this tactical affair will suit. He'll love getting a lead. I don't believe this whole he's going to get lit up and he needs to be. And Aidan Coleman goes on about this again and again. He said people need to get this out of their head that he's a buzzy horse sort of thing. He's very relaxed, and he's been there and done it. That's a massive thing for him over El Fabiolo. Like, yeah, okay, you do different things. El Fabiolo went to Aintree and stuff, but this is 68,000 fans, and Cheltenham is a unique course. Some handle it, some don't. I'm not saying I don't think El Fabio will have any issue, but it's not a question mark for John Bon. So therefore, at the moment, like when I wrote the blog, I am leaning towards John Bon just because something that a lot of people have knocked John Bon with, bar obviously the Warwick run, was people are saying, yeah, but we've seen El Fabiolo make a mistake, and we know he can recover from it and come on. And I was like, I just don't understand the logic of that. So because he can recover from a mistake, that's good. Whereas John Bon hasn't made a mistake, so he doesn't know if he's going to recover from it. Well, I've got a funny feeling that the last thing they'll be thinking about is whether John Bon can recover from a mistake. John Bon has been inch perfect at his fences. That's what they'll be aiming to get at. And I don't see it as that you can knock a horse because they've not made a mistake in 3 runs so far. So it would like if John Bon hits the deck, it's just one of those things. But I find it very unlikely. It would not surprise me if he doesn't touch a twig the whole way around. That's a positive for me, is the fact that he doesn't know how to recover from hitting a fence because he hasn't hit one. That's because he's an electric jumper. And as much as the Warwick was a wake-up, I thought it was brilliant because it means Nicky Henderson takes a breath and says, wow, I have not got him anywhere near what I thought I had him. Whereas he could have that day could have been cancelled, or Calico could have been a non-runner because obviously it was only a 2-horse race. Then he could have scored round, and then he wouldn't have learned anything, and then he could have come into this race and he might have been similar. Whereas Nicky will have tightened every screw. So, and Nicky Henderson, there is no better 2-mile chaser for me, whether it's novices or over the main champion chase trip. He is the best. So that's my case with John Bon. Go to El Fabiolo. Obviously, El Fabiolo, they met at Aintree, El Fabiolo and John Bon. On the day, I think they finished a neck or a head. They finished in defeat. El Fabiolo was only having his second run for Willie Mullins that day, so he's very inexperienced. He did clatter the second or third last. He loomed up to John Bon, and you were like, well, okay, he's definitely going to go past here. He did pass John Bon, but then John Bon battled back and fought all the way to the line and won. So that to me was advantage John Bon. But some people have got 2 ways of looking at it. El Fabiolo had the inexperience, he had a hood and all sorts of things, and it was early days for him. And he'd had time off the track. The John Bond side of it was the fact that he'd just been hammered by Constitution Hill literally 3 weeks before. Most horses go to Aintree after Cheltenham and they run no race. And if they're asked the question, so like El Fabiolo did, they will just fold. So that shows that John Bond's got a lot of grit and attitude. So if El Fabiolo is going to go past, he's going to know he's had a race, unless he is some sort of superstar. Positive for El Fabiolo, obviously he has had crowd experience for that Aintree, and obviously Dublin Race Festival, even though that's a lot smaller crowd. But El Fabiolo has the best piece of form. So he was not the greatest jumper on his novice chase debut, but he didn't ever look like falling, but at the same time he wasn't popping the eyes out like a John Bond. But he was getting across economically. He was very good in the Dublin Racing Festival. He did clatter, I think it was the fourth last he clattered, but straight back on the bridle, carried on, didn't phase him at all. The difference here is if they start turning the screw and he's not ready and one does catch him, I would worry about him hitting one. But at the same time, he's a novice, so he's learning with every run. Like, it's a bit strange for me because you used to come in, you'd have 3 or 4 runs before you come to Cheltenham, but it's becoming more common because people want to do, especially Willie Mullins, he wants to target the Dublin Race Festival, Cheltenham, and then Aintree or Punchestown. He wants all his big runs there. So he doesn't want to have exhausted all his energy coming to here on your 4th or 5th run. So after this, they'll go on to Aintree or Punchestown and hopefully take another Group 1. So I thought he was very good in the Dublin Race Festival, but there's 2 ways of looking at it for me. Option 1 is you look at it straight up on paper through figures and you think, how has he done that? That is amazing. Guys like Dynamo set a red hot pace. He's stayed on his tail within a couple of lengths. It's going to be very similar to how the Arkle be ran. You know he can run to that sort of level. You know he'll run at that sort of speed. He's jumped well enough. Even the clattering one, he's still gone away. And coming to the last, he's gone past Dysart Dynamo like he was standing still, found plenty up for pressure and pulled away from 10 lengths. Beating Banbridge, Appreciate It, and Dysart Dynamo all finished a heap, 10 lengths plus back. That on paper, you're looking at Appreciate It was a Group 1 winning hurdler. Banbridge obviously won at the Cheltenham Festival last year, and Dysart Dynamo was a Group 1 winning hurdler. So that on paper, there is no form better than that over 2 miles this year as a novice. The other way of looking at it, in my opinion, is the fact that El Fabiolo has beaten Dysart Dynamo, who is an out-and-out 2-milers, but possibly didn't stay the extra mile. Not necessarily didn't stay, but he wasn't set up for that. And also, you don't know how fit he was. Willie might have had him 85%, give him as good a run as you can. If he gets tired, then okay, that's perfect. He'll bring him on for the Arkle. So he's technically beaten a Group 1 winning hurdler, but a 2-miler in Dysart Dynamo. The other 2 horses, Appreciate It, for me, has shown very little in the finishing off of a race since the Supreme Novice. Everyone hangs on to this Supreme Novice run. That was 2 years ago now. He's now 9 years old, so he's not improving. And since then, I've seen nothing that would tell me Appreciate It is any sort of at that level. He could well be. He might well blow us away this week on Thursday. But so far, what we've seen him Appreciate, he won 2 egg and spoon races, of which in the second one, the same rival fell. So he was going to place the same rival twice. The rival fell. And I still think he made hard enough work about it. He is a good jumper. But as soon as the screw was turned and the likes of Dysart Dynamo and El Fabiolo started turning the screw in the final section of the Arkle, like, he was cooked. And yeah, okay, it might have been the 2-mile distance and the step up and trip. That will definitely suit. But that's my argument. It's the fact that he wasn't beating a 2-miler. He's beating a horse that clearly needs 2 mile 4 or further, or just isn't what he was. He's not finishing his races. Like, come Thursday afternoon, if the race was the other way around, Appreciate It might well not finish off the Turner's trip either. And then you'd be like, well, actually, that form wasn't that great either. And the other horse is Banbridge. Banbridge won a handicap at the Cheltenham Festival, and then he has been good. But like, people were raving about his performance at Cheltenham. I backed him at Cheltenham in the November meeting, I think. His jumping was impeccable on good ground, but he was beating Tommy's Oscar. Tommy's Oscar's a good horse, but we're talking like a 150 rated horse, like not like a special out of the crowd sort of out of the sky sort of thing. No superstar. So, and also they've said from the start, Banbridge wants at least 2 mile 4 or 3 miles. I think if he not got beaten so bad by Mighty Potter in the Drinmore, they'd still be campaigning around the 2 mile 4 earlier in the season rather than coming to like the Arkle and stuff. So arguably, you then flip it on its head and you say, being devil's advocate, you say, okay, well, he's beat Dysart Dynamo as a 2-miler who hasn't made it at this top level. That was the 3rd time he's not made it at top level. And he's beaten Mighty Potter and Banbridge and Appreciate It, who are both 2 mile 4 or further horses. So technically, what's he actually beaten? So that's the way you've got to look at it. Is the fact that it's where you sit. And for me, I sit somewhere in between. I think that is 100% the best piece of form. He looks like he's got the potential to be the best horse, but it's not nailed on. It's not like you're not saying, oh, he's a certainty. Like I'm hearing people nap this as like their bet of the week, and the other horse being the lay of the week, and people say this is the nap of day one. I don't think I've seen many and people say, oh yeah, you'll say that because like, look how close they are. People who have followed me know how strongly I favour certain horses in certain conditions. Like I remember the Clarence House Chase when it was Shishkin versus Energumene, and I could not have been stronger on Shishkin. And obviously, I did end up nearly getting my own medicine because I thought he was miles better than Energumene, and we found out obviously how good that horse was when he won the Champion Chase. But at the same time, I was correct on the day, but I was so strong, despite they were fairly close in the betting when they first opened up. Obviously, come the off, like Shishkin was odds on, and Energumene was about 6-4, I think it was. But when they first started, they were not far apart, and I had a really strong opinion. I don't want to stand there and tell you and lie to you, basically, and say, because that's not what I'm here for. I'm not selling you a product. I'm here to give my honest opinion. My honest opinion is, if you fancy John Bon, go for John Bon. You fancy El Fabiolo, go for El Fabiolo. I think those two are the absolute standouts. For me, currently, at the time, I'm sticking with John Bon. I think his jumping's impeccable. I think Nicky Henderson loves winning these sort of races. And if El Fabiolo improves past him, then we can start saying, yep, that is the horse. This is another race where people are going to say, oh, I can't believe you didn't back El Fabiolo. He had the best piece of form going into the race. But there's so many more things that come into play when you're betting on novices because you're only looking at one or two runs. It's no different to a bumper. You've seen one or two things of that horse. And unless they were impeccable hurdlers, like really good top-level Group 1 hurdlers, which all of these were brilliant hurdlers, but none of them were like Constitution Hills. So that's my opinion. I'm sticking with John Bon. I think the track will suit, course experience, Nicky Henderson's record in the race, albeit both Henderson and Mullins have both won this 4 times apiece. And that's my decision. A lot of people will be saying because of the rain, it'll bring in El Fabiolo's stamina, but I think John Bon loves the stamina. And if they go head to head, coming down the straight, I'd fancy John Bon. So we'll see. And what happens? You go to 2 out, and they're both going to meet a fence. Like if they're both lined up 2 out, like the Aidan Coleman's going to have every confidence that John Bon's going to meet every single one of those bang on. Whereas is Paul Townend going to know that from El Fabiolo? Not necessarily. But at the same time, I'm not one of those who's going to stand there and knock El Fabiolo's jumper because he's not a bad jumper at all. So bottom line is, pick whichever you want. But for me, I'm sticking with John Bon. Right then, on to the Ultima. And for those that have followed again, a little plug to the Aintree Grand National. I put Corrick Rambler, I put 36-1. Well, 33-1. It was a boost with William Hill, but 33-1 at the start of the season. And there's nothing that has fazed me so far. He's had 2 beautiful runs around. Well, where did he have his first run? First run was a no-show over a really short trip, and then he ran in the Coral Gold Cup, which is known as the Hennessy. So I'll quickly go on the national, then I'll come to this race. So that allowed him to just keep the same mark. He's on the same mark as what Noble Yates won the Grand National off last year. So he's on a winnable mark. The difference was he's managed to get dropped a pound. The weights are now out for the Grand National, so obviously he's turned up here. And now I'd see you go back to that Coral Gold Cup run, and he's in about, I don't know, 10th coming round, and he's just pottering around. Derek Fox is just like, yeah, just nudge him along, don't go too close. And he just plods around, and he's like, thanks, handicapper, cheers, I'll stay on the same mark. And that is perfect. He is lined up perfectly for the Grand National. At the same time, obviously, your concern is here is the fact, 1, how much will this race take out of him? And 2, how much will they put into this race if push comes to shove? For me, is between him and Oscar Elite. If you're going for a bigger price, because obviously they're handicaps, I really like Oscar Elite and I really like Corrick Rambler in this race. I'd say, well, I have put it up as my nap of day one is the Corrick Rambler, but you've got to have a bet on Oscar Elite as well. I mean, there's plenty of horses that could win this. But firstly, I'll start with the Irish are 0 for 15, and they've only had 5 places in this race. And if I say 0 for 15, like you could go back like 30 years or whatever, and they've had, say, 2 in 30. This is a race where they often target, and they often get one that comes late in the market and it starts flying down like a death duty. And like, trust me, I got it even last year. I think it was Ben Dundee. I think I backed. I was like, he just looks too well handicapped. And this year, I've just not even looked at it. If they win, if they win and break that voodoo, then bang, I'll start considering them. But currently, for whatever reason, the English target this strongly, and the Irish don't target it strongly. And the ones that they do, they just don't seem to get it over the line. Because you've got the likes of the fast or slow, who was on my radar for Cheltenham, but it's easy for me to just go off him for here. So the 2 lines that I'm using to find my selections for the Ultima. Number 1 is that 4 of the last 6 winners of this have come from the Coral Gold Cup, the old Hennessy, as I mentioned earlier. So the horses that ran in there, Corrick Rambler and Oscar Elite, both of them just plodded round, had nice runs, good spin outs, and just ran into, I don't know, fifth or ninth or something like that. Like, as in, you could tell that they were there to learn, get the experience, and they were good runs without saying, this is our day that we want to win. And both of those two took place in that race. So that's a positive stat. Corrick Rambler, if you want to go back and watch last year's race, they did a standing start. Everyone went, and he decided he'd do a bigger standing start. And by about the fourth fence, he decided he's going to give the field about 10 lengths. And then he was literally sat at the back for the whole race. Most patient ride you'll probably ever see at Cheltenham. Well, not ever see, because obviously you got the likes of Paul Carberry. But the most patient ride potentially last year's festival. However, he did come through, and he came through, come to the bend, and he still looked like he had no hope. And like, even you asked the jockey afterwards, he was like, I thought I'd get the places, I wasn't sure. And he jumped and he travelled. He jumped and he travelled. And once he started asking after the bridle, he ate the ground up. He just went through it like it just wasn't even there. It was like everyone else was on soft ground and he was on good to firm. And he just flew. And he come up to the last. And I was on Jericho Roque and Oscar Elite. And Corrick Rambler just went straight through the middle like a knife through butter. And it was like the Red Sea parted, and he just went straight through the middle and was like, cheers, guys. And he got up on the line. Incredible ride, incredible horse at the time. And that's what made me back him for the Grand National. He is an out-and-out stayer. And okay, yeah, he might come off the bridle earlier than some of the others tomorrow, but you know that he's going to find plenty for pressure. It'd be nice to see him a little bit further down the pack, like as in actually in the pack rather than at the back. And his jumping can be a little bit sketchy at times, but it's not anything to worry about. It's not. I don't think of him as a horse that's going to hit the deck. Just the fact that he's not perfect at a lot of them. Obviously, the only negative would be for him is the Grand National is the main plan. But Aintree is further back this year. I think it's either 4 or 5 weeks rather than 3 weeks like last year. So they will be looking. Noble Yates raced in this last year and he finished 9th, gave him the perfect prep and then came to here. I think Corrick Rambler, he'll be fit and ready to do himself justice because he's had plenty of months off. And if he's up in the firing line, as in the win is available for the taking, because there's no guarantee you're going to win a national, whereas getting a win at the Cheltenham Festival is massive for the yard. If he can do it, they will take it. Don't get me wrong, if coming into, say, the second fence, there's a horse miles clear and he's well beaten, he's not going to get given a hard time. So for me, I've gone for win purposes for that, but he could finish second, third, fourth, fifth. I don't know, but I generally bet mostly win bets anyway. So, and he is only £6 higher from that. He could have had £6 last year and he still would have won it. Well, he might not. It would have been close last year because of obviously what he did, giving so much ground away. Honestly, if you watch last year, it's staggering. And so point 1 was obviously the Hennessy form. Point 2 was Ultima returning form. Horses that return for the Ultima have a really good record in the race. And for this purposes, you've got Corrick Rambler, Oscar Elite, Remastered, T-Clipper. All 4 of those are all returning. But of the handicap ones, he's £6 up from last year. Oscar Elite, who's another standout, is only £1 up from last year. And the big thing for Oscar Elite as well last year is he ran out of the handicap. So he had to race an extra £2 higher, whereas he doesn't have to this time. So Oscar Elite is actually getting £6 or £7 from Corrick Rambler this year, whereas I think he got 3 or 4 last year. So Oscar Elite also comes into here. The problem with Oscar Elite is he's an all or nothing horse. He's been known to burst and to bleed. And apparently I heard that he bled, but I don't know if that's true because he ran an absolute screamer last year. If you stopped the thing turning in and said, which horse do you want to be on? You'd pick him. Because turning into the hill, he was cantering on the bridle. I think it was Harry Cobden looking across. Or might have been Bowen. Don't know. Either way, the jockey was looking across to see, okay, where's my dangers? Jericho Roque was over on the right across on the rail, and he was out in the middle, and he was looking across, and he hit the front, and they just got into a big tussle the whole way out, which is why it's set up for Corrick Rambler. Wouldn't surprise me if they held on to him a little bit longer this time, and that was a massive run, really big run. This year, who knows how he's managed? Obviously, with the Hennessy run, he's managed to keep his mark down as well, and comes here off only £1 higher. But because of the fact that he was racing out of the weights, he's actually lower than what he was last year. So he is very well in for this run. And Oscar Elite coming into this run on £11. And I just think you look at his price, and he's currently at 11 to 1, probably end up being 11 or 12 to 1. Last time out, he ran a career best when he beat a horse, can't remember off the top of my head, of Nicky Henderson's. I think it was Bold Endeavour, who was sent off like 1 to 2 favourite, and he beat him going away. I think that was a Group 2, and that was a career best. So my only downside of that is I hope that he hasn't ran his race there and he won't run it here, because I think they're only using it as a prep. But if he runs to that sort of level, takes his run from last year, combines it with his improvement from the Group 2 and puts that together, I just can't see how he's not going to be a big player here. Like you've got this race for people who like playing each way. They go like each way up to 7, so he does have blowout potential. But at the same time, I really like those two, Correct Rambler and Oscar Elite, for the Ultima. Unibet Champion Hurdle. So I don't really know what more I can say for this. I'm not one of those who's going to say back this in the without market or back forecast or back lengths, like because I don't want to be focusing on anything else in the race other than Constitution Hill. Like he has been something out of the absolute extraordinary so far, and I really hope that we see that. It scares me in the fact that, like coming into this last year, we had Honeysuckle, and I was very confident that we were going to get the victory, and we'd be laughing and doing all the win because she was just racing against the same horses over the same track, doing the same thing again. The problem with Constitution Hill is where he's still so young, is the fact that you still always fear. It's not even so much age isn't his thing. It's the price because he's so short. You think the only thing you start thinking of, well, what can I possibly go wrong? I cannot see a single negative at all in his demeanour, the way he's run. Like if State Man goes out and leads, perfect. He'll sit in and he'll take a toe, and when he wants to go, he'll go. If State Man doesn't lead and they try to set a slow pace, Nico will pull him out, go past, say, see you later. And if he goes off from the front, I don't see any horse catching him. Whether he gives it a rubbish ride or like, I really find it difficult because he'll just lead and they won't catch him. So if he's in front, they're not going to. So I don't see them wanting to give that. I think State Man will go out in front with the horses like I like to move it. My biggest fear is a horse falling or getting brought down around him and taking him down in any sort of way. Or the other thing is obviously he's been off 3 months as if he didn't run his race. But I don't see him not running his race because the way like Henderson is normally very shy talking about these big horses and doesn't like to pick them up. But the way him and Nico talk about it, like even Nico, who's very, very like just a very humble man, like when he talks about Constitution Hill, like he's already said, I watched a preview earlier in the week and he was like, I'm just going to try and keep it simple, which to me, I hope means that he is going to have him prominent, but out wide of whoever else is in the race. So if 2 horses want to make it and go out front, he'll sit in third, but he'll sit off them. And he made a very strong point with the fact that, like, he was talking about last year's Supreme, and he was when they were talking about John Bon about not wanting to follow Dysart Dynamo. So obviously Dysart Dynamo could have took down Constitution Hill if Nico had decided to follow him when Dysart Dynamo fell. And I think he'd be very aware of that. My only worry would be the first few hurdles. Once they start going, the field should stretch out, the space should be there, and I'm hoping that it just gives him clear daylight. Like as in I'd rather see him go 3 wide at each hurdle just to give him. If he falls at a hurdle, it is what it is. I just really, honestly, I just can't even imagine tomorrow. I'm going to be there tomorrow, and I just cannot imagine the place if he gets brought down or he falls or something like that. Like if he gets beaten at the end of the day, it's one of them things. They've ran their race, and you've got to see that he wasn't to that level or something was wrong or whatever. But to see it, to be robbed of it, would just be I just couldn't imagine it. Like so, on the positive front, I genuinely, from me, I'm not one of these that's like, oh yeah, I think State Man will give him. I don't think that he is going to give him a race in the slightest. I think when he says go, that they aren't going to know which way it will be. In my opinion, obviously I can be wrong. Of course I can be wrong. I think it will be like last year's Supreme Novice. I don't think there's a horse that can get close to him unless Ebertant is way below form, and that's why he keeps humping her, and the rest want to get handicapped. And we've only seen that. And maybe John Bon isn't that good, but he looks pretty good so far. Put it this way: if John Bon wins the Arkle, it's going to put a massive golden star on Constitution Hill's form just before he runs. So I genuinely I don't see a way tactically how he can get beaten. It's just misfortune or him not being as good as we thought he may be. I looked at different ways that you can play this, and I'm listening to like big judges who would never in their million years would even mention lengths bet, and they're talking about putting on lengths bets for like 5, 6 lengths and stuff like that. And that scares me, the fact that these sort of judges, and I'm talking like people who literally they wouldn't even back an odds on shot or an even money shot, and they're talking about putting lengths bets on. That says what people are expecting from this. And I think anything but when Nico says go, he goes and clears this and goes scooting clear, is going to be disappointing. But at the end of the day, I just want to see a win from him. I just want to see exactly what he's got. If you don't want to unleash him fully, that's fine. Just show us enough that gets the crowd. I think this is going to be the race that gets the crowd going absolutely nuts if he puts on a special display. Vauban, not Vauban, State Man, very good horse. Obviously, we backed him last year in the handicaps. He did us well in the Cheltenham Festival because he won for us. I thought he was good at the Dublin Race Festival, but he was beating Honeysuckle, who I think is she's definitely regressed. and I don't think she's at the same level of form as what we've seen in the past. And he beat Vauban twice. So unless Vauban's Vauban's not a superstar, because he's beaten by Honeysuckle. So I just don't see State Man being like. I'd understand if we were looking at, like, say, Constitution Hill was coming into this and he was up against like a Hurricane Flyer or Forheen, but State Man's not any more proven than plenty of these. So I think State Man, like, if you put it this way, take Constitution Hill out, there'll be more runners in the race, but I don't think State Man will probably be like an even money or 2-1 shot, and that'll probably be about right. Like, I think maybe he might win it. But Constitution Hill, I think this could be one of the horses that you just say, wow. Obviously, if you go to my blog, I've written a few cheeky things about this, but at the same time, if you want me to, a lot of people, as soon as the market obviously opens, like you can bet it now, they'll be looking at 2024 Champion Hurdle, Constitution Hill, easy money, double up again, because he's like 5-4. Me personally, obviously, this is my complete hunch. No one's told me this. I don't know anything any more than anyone else. I have a funny feeling that this horse, if he does what we're expecting him to, he's going to go over fences next year. Because I think they're looking at this like a Corto Star sort of horse, like where he could go 2 miles and then he could go up and he could end up in a Gold Cup. Like, as in, he could end up winning an Arkle, a Champion Chase, a Gold Cup. Like, he is a very young horse and he is absolutely electric. And I think, if anything, because he didn't get to run around February time, I think they're probably like almost like quite bored. Like, as in, like, they've got the best horse that they could potentially be one of the best horses Nicky's ever trained, sat at home ready to unleash. And you could tell, like, you listen to them, they are itching, excited, ready to run, but they want to get this one in the bank. And if they get this one in the bank, then I think then they'll go and have some fun. It would not surprise me whether he goes to Aintree or he might even go to Punchestown. I think as soon as they've got the duck off the back to say, right, we've got a Champion Hurdle ticked in the bag, we can plan for next year, but who should we go and smash up for his next run before we move him up to herd fences? So with that bearing in mind, he's like 6-1 for an Arkle. I mean, he could go straight to a Champion Chase, but that'd be pretty unheard of. But it wouldn't surprise me if he did an Arkle campaign and then he stepped up again to like Champion Chase or a Gold Cup. Like, this horse, with his temperament, he seems to be able to do anything. And the way you speak to him, obviously this could all become completely irrelevant if come tomorrow night he's managed to find himself a way to get beaten and not be the horse. But when a few people are saying it, you think, okay, maybe. But when you've thought it yourself and then you see people who you respect really highly all saying it, connections are saying it, like they're talking about him to work with 2 different workhorses at home because otherwise it's not enough test. Like, I think providing he's fit enough, which I'm more than sure he will be. Like, at the moment I look outside, it's raining. He won at Sandown on bottomless ground. So whether it's soft or whatever it is, that's going to be no excuses. And I'm hoping that we see something absolutely phenomenal from this horse. But as I said, like, when the Champion Hurdle mark for next year collapses, okay, if you run the Champion Hurdle, you've missed the price, but it is what it is. It's only 5-4 now. But he could well be a sneaky one that he might end up going over fences. But I've got nothing to back that up. That's just my own personal view. I think they see this as a horse that could be anything like the next Corto Star. Right then, sorry, 2 seconds. This is supposed to only be an hour. Right then, on to the mares. And thank the Lord Marie's Rock is here, because otherwise this was going to be so difficult to assess. Because I just thought, take Marie's Rock out, and there's so many that are in with a chance. I'll go with the negatives first. Theatre Glory, very interesting. Would not be surprised if she ran a massive race. She's just quite inexperienced. I thought if they hadn't ran her and they campaigned her a little differently, she'd have been perfect for a handicap. Strong traveller, good jumper. This may just come a little bit too soon against some battle-hardened horse. She wears it well, 25-1 is very interesting. So in her Mare's Novice campaign, I remember backing her for that. She was about 8-1 at the start of the season, and she was the next big thing. She fell, and then she was out injured for a lot of the season. And then she slowly crept back in, and obviously she beat Queen's Book recently, who's a shorter price than she is. And Queen's Book came second in this last year. So she might not be far off that. And obviously for Willie Mullins, you've always got to respect his runners. I haven't got the stats in front of me, but like that is one just to keep an eye on at a big price. Queen's Book, not for me personally. She came second in it last year, ran a great race. I don't think she's really improved this year. And she beat Brandy Love last time out, but she was getting £9 from that rival. Echoes and Rain will split opinion. A lot of the Willie Mullins camp have been strong on her, and a lot of good judges have been strong on her. For me, I just can't have her. I've got a funny feeling. Again, I haven't got stats. I think this is something like a. In fact, I'm going to get it up so that I don't just fill you with a load of rubbish. But what I'm trying to get at is the fact that she's not an unexposed horse coming into a race for the first time. Yeah, this will be her 14th hurdle start. So She's had 14 hurdle starts. She's improved on the flat recently, but the problem is for me is that she's just very keen. And when you're very keen, trying to stay 2 mile 4 on soft ground is a big ask. So she's got that, and also her form is not fantastic. Like she won the Limestone Lad against Bob Ollinger, who's just collapsed as a horse generally, unfortunately, since his Cheltenham Festival win, which obviously was gifted it with the misfortune of Galloping Des Champs. So I think there's plenty of reasons that you can knock her. She's drifted out to 11-1 now. So she was like 5 or 6-1 earlier in the week. That's probably off the back of the ground. So she wouldn't be for me. Like if she wins, I won't be. Love Envoy was our anti-post horse. So we got Love Envoy at 18-1. It was to win one of his preps and then to win here. So 18-1. And I think that's a good bet now because of the fact that the ground's come up soft. When I first looked at this, I wanted the unexposed horses, the horses that are continuously improving. And I love the way she travels. She travels so strongly. She may struggle to see out the longer trip, but she has done it. She's obviously won over the further trip. She looked good beating the boys. She's looked good beating the girls. And I just think she's a good horse. She is a good horse. Problem is she's meeting very good horses as well. So for the anti-post side of things, I've got no negative for the guys that have followed or girls that have followed on anti-post. But for today, fresh selections coming into it on the field I can see now, she won't be my selection. The second selection, I'm on 2 selections in this. The second selection that I'll be having is Brandy Love. So if you're on anti-post, I'd advise adding Brandy Love, who was 8-1. And if you're having fresh selections, I'd get Brandy Love on there. She was a good horse last year, but came with plenty of quirks. Like her against Allegoria Devassi, and obviously we know how good Allegoria Devassi is. But Brandy Love was very good that race, but she just ended up in the car park where she just kept jumping left. It was like, see you later, see you later. And she just couldn't make up the lengths that she'd given away. And she was beaten by Allegoria Devassi. But that's no great shame. She still was a little bit awkward, but she demolished Love Envoy at the end of last season after having a few months off because she skipped the festival due to injury. I think she got ruled out really late, like 48 hours before possibly. But she hammered Love Envoy despite her jumping chinks by like 6 lengths. Thing is, Love Envoy had raced, I think that was probably her 6th run of the year, and it was on fairly fast ground. It was on good ground towards the end of the season. So there's plenty of argument to say that she'll have every reason to get a lot close to that rival or even beat that rival. But Brandy Love is clearly obviously a top level novice hurdler. It took a while for her to come into herself, whether it's through injury or whatever she's been doing at home. But she returned against Queen's Brook. She had to give, if you could pick a race, I still don't understand why he did it, but he obviously needs to get a run at it. If you could pick a race conditions that could suit a horse less, then you've pretty much got my words wrong there. Basically, you could not pick a race that would suit her less than what she did last time out. I can't remember in fact, give me 2 seconds. Let's be a little bit. I know people call this an amateur podcast, but let's just at least get the racetrack up. So, right, Punchestown. She was at Punchestown, which is obviously a right-handed track, and she jumps left-handed. They were on the inner, which is like a dog track and is even sharper, which is even worse. She was given race fitness to Queen's Brook. Queen's Brook was already a horse rated similar numbers to her and had placed second in the Mares' Hurdle last year. And she had to give her £9. Yet for 90% of that race, she would have been probably travelling odds on and she looked like the winner. The only time she didn't was when they turned for home. She missed 1 hurdle by jumping left. Queen's Brook got first run and she was gone. Paul Townend was like, yeah, no worries, cheers, we've got our run, thanks. And that to me was perfect as a prep. Really, really good. You looked at the way she travelled strongly and all of that. Very, very good. And if anything, I'd say it was better than I expected. And it was a career best on ratings. A lot of people knocked it. She shot out to 10-1. If I'd had those sort of the bookmakers that were offering 10-1, it was like Paddy Power and stuff like that, I'd have taken it, but I unfortunately didn't. So I've had to take the 8s. But yeah, I thought it was brilliant. My only concern for Eccles and Rain is I look at this, Blandy Love, is I think from this field is that she will end up being the best mare's hurdler by the end of the year. My only concern is the fact that that run was only 3 weeks ago. Is it enough time for them to do the necessary to get her up to scratch so that she's bang on for this? It's Willie Mullins at the end of the day. His record with mares is perfection, so it could well be the case. But that would just be on the back of my mind. But the soft ground will certainly suit. And I think she's well suited to run a massive race, and it wouldn't surprise me if she comes there swinging. So, bigger track, going back left-handed. So if she wants to jump left-handed, unless she manages to find a way through the rails, she's going to be on the inside and she's going to be jumping perfectly into the left of the curve, losing no ground. You just wouldn't want to see her on the outside of someone, because if she's on the outside of someone, she could well end up taking them down. But they'll be more than aware of that, so they'll be on the inside, and she'll be just hugging that rail. So a huge chance for Brandy Love. Epatante, I gave a big chance to until the rain came. Not that I think she can't win it now. It's the fact that she is a 9-year-old. She's not regressing. That's another stat. Another stat is that there's not good stats for horses above the age of 7 in this race. It's not that she's regressing, but she's staying at the same level. It's like the runs she's had behind Constitution Hill, what she did to the other mares. Like, she's just meeting the same sort of horse. She's an old champion hurdler, so she's not going to be going above and beyond that level. She was electric in the 2 mile 4 at Aintree last year when she bolted up beating Zanahiyr, but that was on good ground. And I think the reason that Henderson was so keen to split these up was because I think if they thought that if they had good ground, that Epatante was going to take all the beating, and that she'd overturn Honeysuckle. But obviously they don't. It's soft ground, so now that would be a query for me. Like, I'm not saying she can't win. She could well win, but I just don't see it myself. I don't think she'll find enough off the bridle. I'm not even sure she'll have the hardest of races if she's not in like contention. I know that's something that's probably not true to be said of a Cheltenham Festival race, but I mean, the way she won at Aintree last year, like, you must have that in the back of your head coming here thinking, okay, well, we'll race. You have to race her now, really, because you've supplemented. It would be a bit silly if you don't. And obviously, she could well completely prove me wrong. She's not got form. She's got form on soft ground. I just think it would have suited her a lot better being on good ground, as opposed to some of the others that might stay a little better. She doesn't strike me as a stayer who's going to find loads off the bridle, whereas some of these find plenty off the bridle. Like, she was outstayed by Honeysuckle last year. And whilst I think Honeysuckle's regressed, and Epatante would probably beat Honeysuckle in a straight up staying match now, it just says that I don't think she finds an awful lot off the bridle. Well, that's not true. I just don't think she will find as much as others off the bridle. So that's my negative against her. Obviously, I am being picky because you have to be, because you're trying to nail down to 1 or 2 horses. Onto Honeysuckle, I just can't have her straight up. Like I said, when she was 5-2, I said, you give me 4-1, I wouldn't have her. And she's now 7-2. Like, she's just not. Anyone who followed me for the last few years knows how highly, and I hated when people knocked her and the disregard they gave her as, oh, she's not that good. She's a champion. If you're a champion hurdle winner, you're a champion hurdle winner. There's no in between. It's not, you're not Hurricane Fly. You're not that. Like, at the end of the day, just respect them for what they've done, and that is what she's done. Yeah, she beat the same horses. Well, that's not her fault. And I think this is the right race for her to be in, because, I mean, what sort of morale booster are you going to get chasing around 3rd or 4th, providing Constitution Hill does this thing? I think this is brilliant, and she could well be in. Well, she will be in with turning in at the top of the hill. Like, she is going to be in contention, and that's what the crowd are going to be there to see. Would not surprise me whatsoever if the money came on her, because for whatever reason, the money always comes on Honeysuckle. It just pours. Like, you looked at the Dublin Race Festival, and last minute she was like 2-1. Next thing, she's going off like 5-4, 11-8 against State Man. So I don't know whether it's people who are loyal to her and all the works. It wouldn't surprise me if she got back to choose like joint favourite. But for me, I just can't have her. I think she's regressed. People say she hasn't regressed that much, but her last run was something like a 150s run. And it was the lowest RPR she's put in since 2019. And when you think how many runs, obviously she's averaging 3 or 4 runs a year, probably 3 or 4 Group 1s a year, to go back to that sort of level. And I just thought, she travelled well enough, but when Rachel pushed the button, yeah, okay, she stayed on well enough to the line, but it's just the zip's not there. Like, I thought there was an issue at the Hatton's Grace over 2 mile 4, and people were saying, oh yeah, well, when she steps up to 2 mile 4, that's what she wants now. I'm like, well, where was that when she was racing Classical Dream and Tiupu? I mean, Tiupu's not a horse I massively like, and he thrives on soft ground. It was soft ground that day, but it's going to be soft ground tomorrow. So for me, I love the horse. I'll cheer her, I'll clap her. She'll probably be in the paddock and stuff before and after, and it'll probably be her swan song. She could be in the 3, but it wouldn't surprise me if she didn't finish. Well, maybe not so much didn't finish if she didn't get in the first 3. And so I couldn't have her. She's making the market nicely. If she wins, okay, brilliant. I'll take it on the chin, and I'll clap her home. But I can't see it myself. And you see it in the connection's eyes. I think even they see it. That's why it's been said. After every run this year, they've talked about retiring her or not. When you're talking about that, that's not someone saying, she's shown me everything at home, she's just not putting it on track. That's saying, we accept that maybe this is 1 year too many. So, but I'd love to see her bow out, but she's not a selection for me. So on to the final selection. We got there eventually. Is Marie's Rock. Marie's Rock was just about seems to be everybody on Twitter's anti-post horse, because I think a lot of people, if they weren't already on Marie's Rock, backed her the moment Nicky Henderson didn't declare Epitaph, because they all thought Marie's Rock will be the representative here. She's definitely going to go here. She's the past winner, has the best form and all the works. And then suddenly he goes and throws a spanner in a couple of hours later and said it was an accident, and everyone sat on Marie's Rock anti-post. She's shot up over to double figures. Plans are going to the stayers, and then thankfully the soft ground has caused them to come here. 2 mile for 4 furlongs, soft ground. If she was going to be a stayer's horse, this should be right up her street. She's been a very underrated horse, sent off big prices, including by myself. I'd not rated her until this season, to be honest. Last year, she won the Cheltenham Novice. No, take that back. Last year, she won the Mares Hurdle. I was on Tell Me Something Girl, and she was travelling so well at the top of the hill. I was like, how far is this going to win by? But at the end of the day, when they came round to it and they all started pushing off the bridle, she just found so much off the bridle. She's a very keen going sort, but she just found plenty off the bridle when the push comes to shove, staying on to beat Queen's Brook going away. She went on to Punchestown, and again I opposed her, backed Epitaph over her. I think it was a combination of two things. Epitaph had obviously had a long, hard season. She'd already done Cheltenham and Aintree, and she didn't really, well, she couldn't handle Marie's Rock at all. And the other thing is that maybe Marie's Rock was just a much better horse than I thought. You hear from Henderson, they talk about how they were expecting her to be a massive player in the Mares Novice before she got injured. So it's no surprise to them. It just seems to be a surprise to everyone else. But this year, it seems that she's caught everyone's imagination. And when she won the Real Keel, beating like the likes of, what's that really consistent horse? Can't remember the really consistent horse. I'm going to have to find it. Apologies, guys. Poor Pep. Poor Pep. We have got Marie's Rock. It'll come to me as soon as I see it. Dashel Drasher. So she beat Dashel Drasher. And obviously, and that was her first time off since April, so she'd been off 246 days. But while I've asked, I may as well have a look through. Like, you look at this form, and at Punchestown, she beat Stormy Island, Epitaph, Burning Victory, and She Wears It Well. Of which obviously plenty of those are going to reoppose, and of the rest, she'd already beaten at Cheltenham, Queensbrook, Stormy Island, Echoes in Rain. So she's beaten most of this field anyway. Like, you could argue that 3-1, 11-4 is actually a really good, really fair price for her. So when I say obviously I'm on two selections, she's definitely my number one, and then my number two will be Brandy Love. Or if you've gone anti-post, then that puts us on three selections, but it is what it is. Marie's Rock is a strong choice for me in this, because she's been there and done it. She won this last year, and as I said, she's already beaten Honeysuckle. I think is potentially regressing. She's beaten Epitaph before. She hasn't met Brandy Love, which is the fly in the ointment. She hasn't met Love Envoy yet. She's already beaten Echoes in Rain, beaten Queensbrook. She's beaten plenty of contenders. She's been there and done it. She'll love the soft ground, love the 2 mile 4. I think she's got a massive chance. And I think 11-4, 3-1 is more than fair. Right then, 2 races to go. Stay with me. We're nearly there. Right then, the Boodles. For me, this race does not deserve to be at the Cheltenham Festival. I just don't understand how you can quantify. People complaining about mares hurdles and mares chases and stuff like that. Yet you have a race here where horses can come over from France, run off their French rating, and be the equivalent of £10 well in, like a Gaelic warrior. And it just that just does not sit well with me when you're trying to look for a winner. So therefore, I'm looking through, and you've got Tikal, who's the complete obvious worthy favourite, and could well be the one, because he's looked like a Group 1 horse. And I think the reason Willie Mullins was so annoyed with when he was at the Triumph was the Triumph trial, that Lossiemouth looked like she was going to win until she flopped, was because of the issue with Lossiemouth. She ended up going back through the park. Galamus Marceau obviously went through the middle, but it left Tikal wide open for everybody to see him. And that meant that everyone's eyes were drawn to Tikal, because Galamus Marceau went that far clear. They're like, hang on, Tikal's not even that far behind. He's travelled well, he's been 3 wide, he's gone all the way around the outside, and now he's actually like not far off Galamus Marceau. This horse must be a pretty decent one. Whereas if you'd had the original plan, Lossiemouth would have gone through that gap. Her and Galamus Marceau would have gone off and peeled off together, and everyone would have watched them two in a battle to the line, and everyone would have just forgotten about Tikal. And suddenly Tikal comes here. I think he gained £7 or £8 from the handicapper, and now comes off here off quite a big weight. So he has his chance. Willie Mullins hasn't won the race yet. I think he's had 19 attempts, but he has come second in the last two run-ins, so he is getting closer. I'm going to not go through all of these because it takes forever. So my selections are, right, Biker. Biker is around 7-8 to 1 mark. I put him up at 16 to 1, but didn't back him myself, unfortunately. And basically, the reason for is I think it's the Jim Nielsen hurdle over at. In fact, let me get it up. Let's have a look. 2 seconds. The Jim Nielsen hurdle, which was a Leopardstown juvenile trial, and of which the form for the horses. Here it is. 2 seconds. Apologies. Oh, Jim Nolan Novice Hurdle. So the winners of that race, which was about 4 weeks ago, in the last 4 renewals of this, have finished first, unplaced, first, and first. So it's fair to say they have a phenomenal record coming to this race next. The winner of that race was Sir Alan, but the absolute stone cold eye catcher in the background was Biker. Biker looked absolutely thrown in out the back. He was given a very nudgy sort of ride, and the fact that he's Charles Burns with Philip Burns' £5 claimer ridden, like he'd have a monster chance of me in a race which obviously I don't care a lot for, but of that race, if the form lines work out and you do get a winner from that, like the winner, Sir Alan, it looked like that was his day. He battled all the way to the line, had a hard race, and he won on the day. But I can't imagine this stamina test will suit him as much as it will suit a horse like Biker. And Biker got in a fair mark. He only got put up a few pounds. The other horse of interest is Risk Bell. And this is a bit of a gamble, to be honest, because she's 11 to 1. She could end up going off a lot bigger. JP McManus horse, who's won 2 of the last 3 renewals. But at the Dublin Race Festival for the Mares Handicap, which has got a really strong habit of throwing up winners for this race, she was sent off. She was backed all the way in from 6 to 1 into 5 to 2. And considering her races before, she'd not really shown a lot at all. Well, not a lot at all. Like she's finishing like in the places, but she'd not shown anything. She'd not shown anything that would mark her out as winning an event like this. But that money is clearly significant, and that gives her a massive chance. Right, so on to the final race of the day is the, apologies, 2 seconds. What's going on? Yeah, on to the final race of the day, and that is the National Hunch Chase. So to keep it simple, I'm just going to bring this up. To keep it simple, Galliard de Mesnil. I'm not saying he's an absolute certainty. He's not the strongest favourite of the week, but I find it very difficult to find him to get beat. Obviously, on Ange Post, I think it's 6 or 8 to 1 we got him, and he's now even money. But I think anything from even money or above is a more than fair price. There's not really anything that I can knock him with. You look at his form last year in the Brown Advisory here, go back and watch that race. Many of these horses wouldn't be able to do what he did. He finished third. In first was La Home Press, multiple Group 1 winner. In second was Ahoy Senor, Group 1 winner. In fourth, behind him, was Capodanno, Group 1 winner. So that's Group 1 winners around him. He's won a Group 1 himself. And don't get me wrong, it was beating, I think, Mile Mission. But at the same time, he's got a Group 1. People say, oh, well, he hasn't won many races. He's not got many ones next to his name. But you look at the race he's running his campaign predominantly in Group 1 races. Came third in the Irish National, and people were like, did he stay? He was on a monster weight that day, so he carried top weight and finished third behind horses, giving horses like 2 stone. So he definitely stays the trip. I think the soft ground's going to suit him fine. And I just think he's a class above these. I look through, I go for a really quick run through. Tenzing I couldn't have. Mr. Coffee is a horse that just loves coming second. He just travelled so well in last year's Kim Muir. You were like, how far is he going to win? He got beat by an 80 to 1 shot because when asked the question finally off the bridle, he didn't find enough. Manella Crooner, I have got no idea what's going on here. This horse hasn't shown enough that would warrant him being a big contender in this. But for some reason, Gordon Elliott has got a really good record in this race, and he's put him in last minute. And I think it's Barry O'Neill was due to run on Mile Mission, and he swapped and jumped ship to run on Manella Crooner. So for me, that tells me that a big run is expected from that horse. But again, a big run might be expected, but he hasn't won all year, and unless he's going to improve, this is his first time stepping up to 3 Mile 4. Gordon knows what it takes, but at the same time, you're taking a flyer. Mile Mission's already been beaten by Galliard du Mesnil, 7-8 lengths, and Galliard du Mesnil wasn't hard pressed that day. Chemical Energy I really liked when it was faster ground. I'm a bit concerned with the soft ground, but he's very unexposed. He looked brilliant. I was there on the day in the October or November meeting when he bolted up. But since then he's been a bit. He came back. He blew up on his return about 5 weeks ago. But I think that was by design to get some fitness and some jumping practice into him. I'd imagine he'll be primed and ready to go for the day, and he'll put in a big run. But I just look at this and I just think it's a one-horse race. Basically, it's similar to plenty of the others in the race. You either for or against. You can lay him and have the field with him. And I just like. It's not one that at the end of the day, if like you've had a bad day, you want to be steaming in and putting all your money on. But at the same time, if you've staked it out throughout your day and you said this is a favourite you want on side, I totally agree, because I just can't see any sort of chinks. The reason he's not got loads of ones is he's campaigned at top level, and also over the last few months, you look at the races he's running. He's running like 2 mile 4 races behind. Like he finished in front of Banbridge, who apparently is going to return. Some people think he's going to reverse the form of Mighty Potter. He finished in front of Banbridge, only 6 lengths off Mighty Potter in the Drimmoor, and that's the best 2 mile 4 race of the year. So he's got the speed to lay up there. He's won over 3 miles, and then he's gone back to 2 mile 4 again at DRF. So me personally, I just think they've just been ticking over, keeping him at that trip just for one huge effort over the longer trip. Like you don't campaign, it's like campaigning for a marathon. You don't campaign your horse at a marathon distance all year. You just do it for that one sort of thing. And I'm hoping he's just got one big run. And if you watch back last year, on that Wednesday in the Brown Advisory, it was bottomless ground. It was the day of the monsoon. So it would have been 3 mile 1 or 3 mile furlongs plus how heavy it was. So tomorrow would be 3 mile 4 with this ground. He's got the best amateur jockey in Patrick Mullins, and I think he takes the beating. So that is day one complete. So I'm going to just in summary, I'm not going to go back through all of the runners. In summary, we've gone for Facile Vega and Elite Tomp, providing we can get a price where they're at least evens Dutch between them. Sticking with John Bon, Korak Rambler and Oscar Elite, Constitution Hill, Marie's Rock, main bet, Brandy Love, additional bet, Biker and Risk Bell, and also keep an eye on Zanderbad. He looks so well handicapped, but it's sneaky that they've not even managed to get him in because he's that well handicapped, so he's only a reserve at the moment. But it'll be a big price if he does run. And then in the final race, National Hunt, Galliard du Mesnil. I also put a Trixie up on my blog. Obviously, multiples, make them your smallest bets. Don't do them at all. Make them a free bet, but they're just for a bit of fun because it's Cheltenham. So my day one multiple is Galliard du Mesnil in the 5:30, Marie's Rock in the 4:10, and then Korak Rambler in the Ultima, so the 14:50. So the three of those, and I'll be doing a really small stakes Trixie. So Trixie is 2 doubles and a treble, so it needs 2 of those to win in order to for the bet to land. So we'll see how we get on. I've got a load of multiples and all sorts of stuff over on my Cheltenham blog. Appreciate all the support. I hope you enjoy this. If there's any things I need to do differently, like volume or anything, then let us know. But chances are I will have recorded all the videos because I'm off to Cheltenham tomorrow. So good luck, and I hope you win plenty of money off the bookies. Thank you.